And we're off.
The left-hand side out with the bay right now, it's called the port side. Port and left both have 4 letters, both end in T. And then finally, the right side of the boat is called the starboard side. And the easy way to remember that is it's not the port side. So just remember one, you'll get the other. Now on the right-hand side, I want you to look in between the Great Wheel and the Seattle Aquarium. There's a little tiny pier over there. It's got a jellyfish playground on it right now. This is Pier 58. Now, Pier 58, historically really important spot for the development of Seattle. It used to be a lot bigger than it is. Unfortunately, the original pier fell down into the water. They rebuilt it. The one that they rebuilt also fell down into the water as well. So, not a great moment here. But Pier 58 steamship line heading back here to Seattle from Alaska. People went crazy thinking about all the gold that they could make for themselves, and so they gathered down here on Pier 58 to see that steamship come in, and when it got here, it actually had 2 solid tons of gold aboard, and that kicked off that Klondike gold rush. Really lasted for about 2 years. Lots of people going up to Alaska to make themselves rich, or at least try. But the people here in Seattle also made it rich, and that's because they figured out the way to get rich on a gold rush is not to grab your shovel and go dig yourself. Instead, it's to sell the shovels to all the people going up trying to strike it rich. And so we did something called mining the miners here. So lots of important companies started at that time, UPS, Nordstrom, all kinds of cool companies there that are still around to this day, started during that Klondike gold rush. Now, of course, we had lots of producers around here selling goods, and over the next 10 years, we sold to middlemen, and the middlemen would then sell to the customers. And after about 10 years, all of the producers, all the farmers here in Seattle got kind of sick of it. That's especially because there was massive inflation. At one point, in 1907, they were selling 1 pound of onions for the equivalent of $35. So that astronomical amount certainly made the farmers upset, made the customers upset too, so the farmers decided they were going to sell directly to the customers. They came down here, a couple carts, about 10 of them the first day, came down, sold out before lunch. The next day about 80 farmers came down, those also sold out before the end of the day, and that in 1907 was the beginning of Pike Place Market. If you look, unfortunately a little bit back behind you, you're going to see a big balcony with some red umbrellas on it, and if you follow that all the way past that tan building with red windows, that is all the backside of Pike Place Market. Hopefully lots of you have gone to Pike Place before. It's a really great spot, one of our most popular tourist spots, but definitely not a tourist trap. All kinds of great stuff. You of course have that famous fish market up on the street level, but if you stop there, you'll actually miss about 80% of the whole place, because there's 5 full floors to Pike Place Market, including some cool attractions. The world's oldest comic book store is there. There's an old school magic shop. There's the freshest flowers you're going to find not in your own garden, and a lovely attraction called the Gum Wall, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's part of Post Alley where the walls are all covered in gum. The story with that goes, theater goers in the 1990s had to ditch their gum before going into the theater, and like civilized people, they stuck it to the walls of the alley. Well, that went on and on through 2015 when they finally decided to clean up all the gum for the first time. If you'd have seen it, you'd have said, wow, that's a ton of gum, and you would have been right, because they cleaned up 2,300 pounds of chewing gum off the walls. On our shoreline here, you can see this really colorful building. Kind of looks like an airport, but of course that wouldn't make much sense. This is the Bell Street Cruise Terminal, built in the year 2000. This was built when called the World's Fair. The World's Fair was 6 months long, supposed to bring an estimated 10 million visitors to town. And so the people that built the Edgewater thought, hey, these 10 million people are going to need a place to stay, so let's open this beautiful temporary hotel. We'll keep it open for the run of the fair. We'll make all of our money back, plus a whole bunch more. And then when the fair closes, we'll close as well. That would have worked great, except for anyone want to guess how many of those 10 million visitors actually got to stay at the Edgewater Hotel? Any guesses? None is correct. That's because of construction delays. The Edgewater opened 2 weeks after the World's Fair closed. Their entire funding plan was out the window, and they had to figure out what to do next. The answer they came up with was exactly out the window. That is how they let people fish out their hotel room windows, which sounds like a brilliant idea unless you actually think about it. Because what happens when you're staying on first floor, when the person on third floor decides to go fishing, when fishing is best about 4 in the morning? Then you get a lovely 10-pound fish flapping against your windows, a wake-up call you definitely did not want. And then the question was, wait, what did they do with the fish once they got it into their nicely carpeted and upholstered hotel rooms? The answers there, of course, were also never good. Lots of people did try to gut and clean the fish into the little bucket that they give you. Others just gave up and put it in between the mattresses or under the pillows, wrapped in towels, all kinds of great stuff that housekeeping loved. And still others tried to keep the fish alive in the bathtub with tap water and table salt. That, of course, will get you salty dead fish. Now that practice finally outlawed in the 1980s, but by then the Edgewater was doing just fine. They had a different reputation. It only took 2 years actually after they opened because the Beatles stayed there in their first North American World Tour. And since the Beatles did it, then everyone else and their mother wanted to do it too. So it's become the rock and roll hotel in town. All kinds of great bands have stayed there, but not just bands. Even His Holiness the Dalai Lama has stayed there at the Edgewater. You are currently getting your closest, most unobstructed view of the Space Needle that you're going to get from our tour today. The Space Needle, also built for that 1962 World's Fair. This was the centerpiece for it, and unlike the Edgewater, was actually completed on time. However, it did take till the very night before for the last elevator to be installed. The elevator you can see about halfway up on there is a new elevator. It's a double-decker glass front elevator, giving you great views as you go up. Now, because it was the centerpiece for that World's Fair, it sits at the center of the fairgrounds, which have now been renamed to Seattle Center. All kinds of great stuff to do there, like the Children's Museum, the Pacific Science Center, the MoPop, which is a museum of pop culture, and the Chihuly Garden and Glass Museum. All great stuff to do, in addition, of course, to going to visit that Space Needle. Now, the Space Needle, when it was built in 1962, became the tallest building here in Seattle. Tops out at 605 feet. I want you to just make a mental note of that number. That's going to come back for us in just a little bit. There used to be a restaurant up there that rotated around, but they've since taken that out, and now it's just a glass-floored observation deck. So you can't go up there, and if you've got some time to kill, you can stand in the same spot for 45 minutes, and it'll rotate you around to give you your 360 view of the city. I also want to just make note, take a look at the Space Needle, and then up on the hill you've got 3 broadcast towers up there. I want you to just, again, take a little mental picture of that, because in a couple hours, those landmarks are going to come back for you, but you're going to see them in a little different light, and that will help give you an orientation on where you started, where you went, and then where you are at that point. Now that hill where those broadcast towers are, that is the neighborhood of Queen Anne. We're going to be talking about neighborhoods quite a bit on this tour, and this is one of the great ones here. Now, Queen Anne was originally called Eden Hill, and that was before it got settled. Originally, it was really hard to build on there because the hill was just too steep. And then the Great Fire of 1889 happened on the south side of Seattle in the Pioneer Square neighborhood. After that happened, all of the rich people didn't want to deal with the whole rebuilding of downtown Seattle, and they were the only ones wealthy enough to regrade the land up there on the hill in order to make it buildable. And so all the rich people then moved up and built their brand new houses up there on Eden Hill. Well, they were building in the most popular style of the day, which was the Queen Anne Revival style, and then the newspaper jokingly called it Queen Annestown, and the name just stuck. So officially, the neighborhood of Queen Anne. There is a great little park up there. If you're looking for a beautiful panoramic view of downtown Seattle, it's called Cary Park. To be honest with you, it's tiny. It's a really little park up there, but it probably will give you the best view of downtown Seattle that you're going to get. You likely have seen the picture before. You've seen a postcard of Seattle. It's the one where the Space Needle's in front, centered, downtown right behind it, and then on beautiful sunny days, of course, Mount Rainier in the distance behind that. Unfortunately, can't really see Rainier right now because it's super cloudy down there. But if you were to see it, you can see where those giant white cranes are. That's about where Mount Rainier would be. Now, off to your left-hand side, the Manassas. This is a bulk carrier. Now, a bulk carrier is a special kind of cargo ship that carries one kind of product loose down in the hold. There's a couple examples. You've got the one off to your port side. And also, if you look off the starboard side, you can see the Aqua Pride over there. Another one of those bulk carriers. The Aqua Pride is pretty full, and you can tell that because you can barely see any of that red stripe on the bottom. If you contrast that with the one out in the bay, you can see that that one's pretty much empty because you can see a bunch of that red paint. That red paint is actually specialized paint to make sure that no little creatures, barnacles and all that will actually bond to the ship, because of course that would make it less hydrodynamic as it goes through the water, and that would slow the ship down. So that special paint helps all of that to stay clean on the bottom of the boat, but it's really expensive, and so they don't paint up higher than they need on there. So the water should never really touch that black paint. It'll always be down in the red, but that's the quick and easy way to tell how loaded those ships are. Now, those ships are going to haul out our largest export by volume, which is actually cattle grade grain, mostly soybean and corn used for cattle feed. So that's what's stored in those silos off to the right-hand side, back behind the Aqua Pride. And then if you look to the north of that, you're going to see another business campus. White walls, lots of windows, gray roofs, and just coming into view, a white twisty bridge in the background. Now that twisty bridge is in the shape of a double helix. That of course is the shape of human DNA. That makes sense because this was originally the home to Amgen, which is a large biotech company. However, Amgen sold it off in 2015 to a different Seattle tech company, and that is Expedia.com. Now chances are if you use the internet to get around the world, you probably use Expedia even if you don't know it. That's because Expedia owns over 250 different travel sites, and they often make you bid against yourself on another one of their sites to find your so-called best deal. Now, they bought that place, they renovated it, and then they had the goal to have all of their workers into their brand new headquarters in March of 2020. I don't know if you remember March of 2020, but it was not the ideal time to open a brand new campus. That's because they had that place open for about a week, and then they had to send every single one of their employees home for a year and a half because of COVID. Even now, only about 70% of the workers have come back. The rest still working from home. So good for them. Now to the left of the Expedia campus, you've got Smith Cove. This is home to two of the largest piers in the Western Hemisphere. Now, there's some stuff here that's going to tie into our tour today. Now, this, the big kind of star of our show, of course, is going to be the Lake Washington Ship Canal. And there were several routes that we're talking about to build a ship canal during the late 1800s, early 1900s. One would have been way south of the cities to come up through the Duwamish. One would have cut through Seattle, right at the base of Queen Anne. Still another one would have come up right here in Smith Cove. Now, Smith Cove, home to those really large piers, two of the largest in the Western Hemisphere. The one on the right, behind that ship called the Excellence. Now, the Excellence and the other vessels on there are fishing vessels. Those ones are trawlers, factory trawlers. That means they catch the fish and they process them on board, and then they'll bring it down and they'll store all of their catch in those tan buildings. Those are cold storage for the North Pacific and Alaskan fishing fleets, and largely they catch a fish called wild Alaskan pollock. Has anybody eaten wild Alaskan pollock before? Let me see if I can get a few of you. I got one. Anyone eaten a McDonald's fish fillet, or fish sticks, or imitation crab, or cat food? I don't judge, whatever. All of that, wild Alaskan pollock, and there's about a 70% chance that it came through those buildings there. Now, the fishing vessels that will park along that pier, combined with the ones that will dock in the Lake Washington Ship Canal, actually account for 60% of the country's entire fishing catch by weight. So really remarkable to have all of that centered right here in Seattle. Pretty cool. To the left of Pier 90, you've got Pier 91 with those gray buildings on it. This is actually our second and third cruise ship terminals. Now, this was a cool pier because it was the second in the world to install what are called shore ties for the cruise ship. Now, what a shore tie is, in essence, is a giant extension cord. You're getting to see a jut of land over there that kind of looks like an upside down frying pan. That is the neighborhood of West Seattle. This is the oldest and largest neighborhood in the entire city, and the handle of that fry pan would be Alki Point. Now, if you're looking for a beautiful sandy beach, Alki Point has that in Alki Beach, but it is also a really historic spot. This is a spot where the first European settlers landed here in Seattle. They were called the Denny Party. They came over on the Oregon Trail, and then in September of 1851, they sent 3 men from the party up here to Alki Point. The goal, they simply scouted out the area, thought that was a great place for their settlement, and so they sent one of the guys back down to Portland to get the rest of the Denny Party, leaving 2 men up here with the goal to build a cabin that would house everybody for that winter. So in November, when the rest of the Denny Party came up, they expected to find 2 guys all safe and happy and warm in a lovely completed cabin. They were sorely disappointed when they got here and mildly terrified because one of the men that they had left had gone missing. We don't know what happened to him. The other guy that they found had had an accident with an axe and his foot, so he was pretty useless. There was no roof on the cabin, and all of their food had been eaten by skunks. So, everything had gone wrong, and they probably, honestly, would have died that winter if not for the Duwamish people. They are the indigenous people of the area. They were very friendly to the Denny Party, helped them survive that winter, and then come springtime, they gave them a little advice, and that is staying out here on the point is not a great idea because all of the weather hits you there. You want to be somewhere more weather protected, and so they suggested they move east across the bay, and that is where the Pioneer Square neighborhood is now. They have fairly good relations with the Duwamish, and those relations got formalized in an 1855 treaty called the From Elliott Treaty. It essentially ceded millions of acres of land to the new settlers in exchange for reservations being set aside, some financial considerations, and hunting, gathering, and fishing rights here in Seattle. Unfortunately, like so often happens, those promises from the settlers did not get fulfilled. There were no reservations set aside, in addition to some other things not happening as well. So, unfortunately, a really tragic part of that history between the Duwamish and the settlers. Now, if you want to learn more about the indigenous people, the Duwamish, the first people of Seattle, you're going to want to head to West Seattle and go to the Duwamish Longhouse and Cultural Center. It's a phenomenal spot. It teaches you all kind of cool history about the first people of Seattle who are still here to this day. So, can't recommend that highly enough to you. Now, looking back to our starboard side, we have passed Elliott Bay Marina. That's what all those sailboats are. There are about 1,200 boats that are parked there at Elliott Bay Marina, and each of those boats pay on average $1,000 every single month just to park the boat there. So, pretty crazy there. Behind Elliott Bay Marina, you have the neighborhood of Magnolia. Now, Magnolia, you should get used to it being on your right-hand side because it's going to stay on our right-hand side all the way till we are in the locks. Now, the neighborhood of Magnolia was named that, of course, as you might guess, for the lovely magnolia trees up there. I wish that's how that would have happened. But when they were exploring the area, they looked at that lush hill and they thought, wow, what beautiful magnolia trees. Let's call it Magnolia. Unfortunately, when they got up there, they found that there were no magnolia trees and all of them were actually madrona trees. However, at that point, there was another neighborhood that had been named Madrona, so they couldn't just rename it. So they did the next best thing, and that is to furiously plant as many magnolia trees up on the hill as possible. So there are beautiful magnolia trees up there now, but it is a little bit of a flub that they had in order to get those. Now, one of the other neighborhoods I'm going to point to is a really special one. If you look off your port side and in front of us, you can see this beautiful strip of land over there across Puget Sound. That is Bainbridge Island. Now, Bainbridge is a bedroom community of about 23,000 people. If you're unfamiliar with that term, what it means, the 23,000 people that live on Bainbridge Island usually go to work across the bay in downtown Seattle. Now, ironically, what you're not going to see going out to Bainbridge Island is a bridge. And that, of course, is because the water beneath us is too deep. In Elliott Bay, where we just sailed out of, that water's on average about 400 feet deep. But between us and Bainbridge Island right now, that water is on average 600 feet deep, or the height of the Space Needle. So, now if you wanted to build a bridge going out there, you'd use a 3-to-1 ratio, and so you would need a bridge that is 1,800 feet tall, or 3 Space Needles tall, which you can tell is absolutely absurd. So instead what we use are the Washington State ferries. You can actually see one. If you look over toward Alki Point, you can see one of those ferries. That one is sailing out to Bainbridge Island. Now if you're looking for a great half-day trip out of downtown Seattle, hopping the ferry out to Bainbridge is a phenomenal option for you. It costs you $10.25 a person, unless you're a senior citizen, then it costs you $5. It is a 35. There's all kinds of art galleries, shops, and restaurants, cool places out there to see. And then the return trip, absolutely free. You just walk back on the ferry and they'll bring you back to Seattle. So hard to beat the price, definitely hard to beat the scenery as well. Really phenomenal stuff. Honestly, I think the city's best Vietnamese restaurant is out there called Ba Sat. So if that's part of your desire, that'd be a great spot for you to go as well. Now, back behind Bainbridge Island, unfortunately shrouded in cloud largely, is a really important landmark. That we get here, and that is the Olympic mountain range. Believe it or not, back behind Bainbridge is a mountain range with peaks somewhere between 5,000 to 8,000 feet tall. Now, I like to bring it into the conversation, even if you can't see it, because it's actually really responsible for the rain that we get here. If you're trying to locate where you are on a map, if you were to go to the other side of that mountain range at about 70 miles out, you would find yourself in the Pacific Ocean. For us to sail to the ocean, we would have to go north about 70 miles and then make that hard left turn, take that out 70 more miles into the ocean. But of course, weather systems pick up all kinds of moisture over the ocean, and then they head this way waiting to rain it down upon us. That makes sense? How many of you have heard that Seattle is a really rainy town? A lot of you? Yep, you're kind of right and you're kind of wrong. You're right, because in an average year we get about 151 rainy days. So definitely lots of days kind of like this where it's dreary, cloudy, all of that. But you're also a little bit wrong, because in an average year we only get 30 to 34 inches of rain. That actually puts us at number 49 on the list of major metropolitan areas. In fact, Dallas, Texas gets more average rain than we do here in Seattle, and that is because of those Olympic mountains. Weather systems will come this way, they'll hit the mountains, they're too heavy to get over the top, so they drop all the rain on the opposite side of the mountain range in a spot called the Hoh National Rainforest. There they get somewhere between 14 to 17 feet of rain every single year, making it one of the wettest places in the entire world. Because of the moisture there, moss will also grow on pretty much any surface out there, and moss is a natural absorbent of sound, making the Hoh National Rainforest one of the quietest places in the entire world as well. Now, like I said, there is a route that you can take to get out to the Pacific Ocean, meaning that the water you are currently on is Pacific salt water. Now, that comes with some issues, I shall say, and that is because since we are connected to the ocean, we're subject to the same tides. We get 2 high tides, 2 low tides every day. The average swing between those is about 17 feet. If you're unfamiliar with how the tides work, I actually think it's really cool. If you were to look at our globe from above the North Pole, you would notice that the oceans are actually not in a perfect circle. They're in an oval shape. And they're made oval because of the gravitational pull of the sun and the moon. So those oceans don't actually move. It is the Earth that spins in the midst of that circle. So when the spot on your globe spins into the ends of that oval, that is called high tide. And then when it spins to the sides of the oval, where it's the thinnest, that is low tide. Now Now what that also means is that if you're here during king tide season, that's when the sun and the moon line up and they pull a little bit harder on that oval, you're going to get your highest highs and your lowest lows, making the difference between that high and low tide actually about 24 feet. So really a very large difference there as well. If you look off to your right hand side, you can see a giant boulder over there in the water with a green signal on top. That is called 4 Mile Rock. It's called that because it sits 4 miles north of Yesler's Wharf. That was the first sawmill here in town. That's a glacial erratic. So as the glaciers came through here and carved out this waterway, that was one of the pebbles that was cast aside from that massive glacier. That's also a signal to me that